Amadeus, directed by Milos Forman, was released in 1984 and tells a semi-fictionalized account of the life of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, told through the lens of his rival from the time, Antonio Salieri. It covers the last decade or so of Mozart's life, um, and it's a film that I really like and I have a lot of respect for. Um, it's a film which is driven primarily by the strength of the characters and by the phenomenal acting in the film. It contains one of the best film performances of all time, in my view, which is the role of Antonio Salieri, played by F. Murray Abraham. Abraham won the 1984, or I guess 1985, Best Picture. No, sorry, not Best Picture, Best Actor award at the Oscars, and in my view, that was very richly deserved. Um, the thing that sets apart a good performance is really committing to adding that layer of depth of really inhabiting the skin of another individual. And with Salieri in this film, you get so much with even just 5 seconds of his screen time. You really just, with every expression he gives, with every inflection, with every line delivery, with every look, there's just another layer of richness added to this character, another layer of depth and personality given to him, which really stands out for me, and it's really something that's unusual to see in a film, because the performance is actually quite stoic. You know, he doesn't emote, he doesn't scream or shout or cry or anything, but it's just still one of the most emotive performances of all time. So at the start of the film, Salieri is this established composer in the court of the emperor in Vienna. His compositions are so-so. He's respected in his time, but they're not. His compositions aren't exceptional, and he's someone who is completely convinced that his worldview is correct. So he's completely convinced that his personality he's very pious. He's very sort of restrained. He very humble. Um, he believes that, and also he's very committed to his music. He spends so much time and effort on it. He's not necessarily ambitious, not necessarily jealous. He's just he just wants to be good at what he's doing. He just wants to produce good music, and to be recognised for it. But his worldview throughout the course of the film is turned upside down once he meets Mozart. Now, Mozart in this film is he's played by Tom Hulce, and he's portrayed really as a sort of Bulgarian almost. He's quite crass. He tells dirty jokes. Makes fun of people. No humility about anything, and overall, just as a counterpoint to F. Murray Abraham, he's just really quite quite ostentatious almost. He doesn't show any gratitude for the fact that he's got this amazing gift, and that is what infuriates Salieri the most, because Salieri knew of Mozart. He had really sort of grand expectations of what he would be like as a person, and they're just completely subverted. And all of a sudden, Salieri's worldview shatters. He's angry at the world. He's angry at God um, for giving Mozart this talent, even though he's an ingrate essentially, and for the fact that his own music, from his perspective, is mediocre. Um, and I think another thing that gives a layer to Abraham's performance um, is also the fact that he genuinely loves Mozart's music. He really does. He has a really good eye for a really good ear, rather, for good music, and he recognizes that Mozart's music is beautiful. It's emotive. He describes it as divine and miraculous, and he knows that his music, in comparison, is sort of mediocre. It's not anywhere near as good. Um, and also as a counterpoint to that, Tom Hulce as Mozart. I think people, when they think of this film, they tend to think of Mozart being just the Vulgarian. They don't think of him as having any depth, but that's not entirely true. I mean, the way that the way that Mozart's played is, yes, he is careless, he is quite juvenile, sort of immature, but he's not a completely sort of bad person. He's someone who, you know, he has a lot of respect for a lot of love for his wife and for his father, and as the film goes on, he seems to appreciate uh, he seems to take bit more of a stand as the film goes on and tries to piece his life back together. But obviously, and I guess this isn't a spoiler, I mean, he died 200 years ago. The film ends with his illness and death. Um, but yeah, he's a naive character, and ultimately, as he deteriorates physically, you know, Salieri deteriorates sort of mentally and spiritually. I guess his entire worldview is upended, and he he becomes a bad person. Really, he takes advantage of Mozart. He tries to shut him down, and all that sort of piety and restraint that he had at the beginning of the film just evaporates. And again, it's such a great performance because you see every minute of it, um, every minute of his decline throughout the film, and it's just evoked so well. And I notice something different in the performance every time I've watched it. Um, the third character in the film, I guess, really is the music itself. The music is the sound. Mozart's music is the soundtrack to the film. It's interwoven throughout all of it. It's used obviously in certain scenes where music is actually being played, but it's also used elsewhere just as to sort of punctuate the film. And it's really well done. Um, it's a film that obviously I was aware of Mozart's music before seeing the film, but it really helped me to appreciate certain pieces of music quite a bit more. There's certain pieces of music in here that really that I find really beautiful, particularly the Kyrie from the Great Mass in C minor, which is played at what I think is possibly the best scene in the film, where Salieri is given Mozart's first drafts by his wife to look over, and you know, he's just absolutely overwhelmed with how beautiful all this music is, and by the fact that it's a first draft, you know, it's really just sort of first scribblings, and it's already just the most beautiful music that he's ever heard, and he's just such a great performance, and watching it's such a joy to watch and to listen to. And this film inspired me to seek out other music by Mozart as well. It's just such as a composer, I think he's the best composer. I mean, I don't know very terribly much about music. It's not something I've ever studied, but I do like to listen to classical music. And my preference for listening is probably Mozart. I just think there's such an emotion to it. There's such a sort of I can never say this word, a transcendental quality to it. It really feels beautiful when you're listening to it. It's really it's relaxing and powerful at the same time. I really like it, and I think this film is a real love letter to Mozart and his music. Um, and then that's reflected also in the production design of the film, which for a period piece they really did put in a lot of effort for it. It really feels like you're watching something visually anyway in the 18th century in a city like Vienna. It's set in Vienna, but they filmed in Prague. The reason for that being that out of all of the European cities in the 80s, Prague was the one city they found that really retained a lot of the look and a lot of the atmosphere of the 18th century. So when you see exterior shots in this film, or scenes in the street, or even some of the halls that they shoot in, it really feels like what you're seeing isn't a set. It's you know, it's a real street that existed in Prague in the 80s. But obviously they had, you know, extras with you know, contemporary clothing and things like that. But they really did go the extra mile to make it look like a lived in 18th century city. And I think that's really admirable. They use Steadicam quite a bit throughout the film as well, and I think that works. That's a Stanley Kubrick innovation. I think, I don't know if he was the first one to come up with it, but he used it most famously in his films, and I think it really goes a long way to sort of integrating the audience with the atmosphere of the film, just letting you, as Salieri's walking through the halls, he's narrating, um, you're in the music's playing in the background. When you're on the Steadicam, you really do. It's like you're walking with him, and you're just sort of integrating with the atmosphere of the film. And another great attention to detail thing, or I'm not sure if that's the right expression, going the extra mile, is that the opera scenes in the film, or at least most of them, were filmed in the actual opera house that Mozart conducted in the 18th century, which is just incredible. And again, I think that's part of why this film feels like a love letter to Mozart's music. It's a gorgeous looking film. There's a famous scene for sort of people that admire cinematography anyway, where F. Murray Abraham's in a room that's lit solely by candlelight, and there aren't any off-camera lights to that as well. It was lit solely by candlelight, which sounds really difficult and dangerous to do, but they were able to do it, and it makes for a really good looking scene. It's a gorgeous film. The one criticism that some people have of this film is the director Milos Forman's choice to use American accents in the film. So no one speaks German or Italian or anything. No one's putting on an accent. People are just speaking in their own accents, which some people find distracting. I personally don't mind, because I think it's preferable to the alternative. I mean, if you had these actors just speaking speaking English but with like affected Austrian accents or whatever, I mean, it would sound ridiculous. I think it would affect the quality of the acting. I think what annoys some people really is that the accents aren't just American accents; they are regional American accents. So I was watching the film, and I was actively trying to place some of the accents. I was like, the Emperor. He sounds like a character from like Fargo or something, and Mozart's wife as well has a very sort of broad accent. I can't really place it, but I can understand why some people find it distracting. I personally didn't mind it too much. So it's a film about quite powerful themes, really. Salieri starts the film with a really sort of idealistic view of the world, that if he is a good person, if he acts like he's supposed to, then he will be rewarded and good things will happen to him. But he meets Mozart and he realizes that that's just not how life is. Sometimes people can be ungrateful and be rewarded. And it's strange to see that theme in a film. It's not a theme that's commonly encountered, because it is quite dark. It's not something that a lot people like to be reminded of, that the virtuous are not always rewarded, the wicked are not always condemned. And I think the way that the film just brings out these great performances in the two lead actors to really illustrate these themes, to me is very powerful, and it's one of the reasons that I return to this film every now and then, just because great use of Mozart's music and great performance by F. Murray Abraham with great themes attached. So as for a rating, I'm going to give Amadeus 87 out of 100. It's a truly great film with truly great performances, some of the best of all time, and I really can't recommend it enough.